Mike McCarthy is not going to be coaching this upcoming NFL season. The word coming out from Tom Pelissero that McCarthy, that's his guy, by the way, in the media, one of his peeps. McCarthy did not garner the interest from the Saints that he thought he would. That was from Jordan Schultz. Pelissero, he's going to be a little bit more diplomatic and say he's going to focus his attention on next year. Expected to be a strong candidate. Jordan Schultz says did not get the interest that he anticipated. It's starting to seem like Kellen Moore is the leader in the clubhouse. McCarthy backs out before being shut out. And Josina Anderson yesterday in Crosstalk reported that there seemed to be a little tug of war and disagreement over what McCarthy wanted and the Saints front office was willing to give.
Yeah, and now we'll see where they wind up going with their head coaching search if Kellen says no, because if you're going to go in there, they have cap hell and they have no quarterback. I would absolutely try to wrestle power away, right? Like if New Orleans' front office has put them in this position where you have no cap, you got some dudes there, but you don't have a ton, and you don't have a quarterback. I don't know, man. It's like, if you're going to go in there as a head coach, you'd be like, why would I not try to do this? You guys have obviously failed over the last few years.
Which, by the way, I'd like to point out that the New Orleans situation is from administrative or financial switches being flipped and maneuvers that are the same ones that people keep going, you could get $100 million here in Dallas.
Gentlemen.
You get $100 million here in Dallas, you're going to be New Orleans in a couple years. That's what will happen. That's how this whole situation works.
That's all Orlovsky says about the Cowboys on TV now. How are you going to compete next year? You got a $90 million Dak Prescott hit. You did not. That's all he says. Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Should Sean Payton be blamed for that, by the way?
I mean, they were pretty, like, Sean Payton was the big decision maker there, but I mean, they were pretty, like, close in terms of the way they operated with Mickey Loomis and things like that. I think that's definitely a organizational wide screw up, or maybe not even a screw up. A lot of teams will do that intentionally. They'll say, this is our window, it's open, we're going to take the chance here, and we'll have to take a path in a couple years if we need to.
Bobby, for this hiring cycle, you win. You are correct in Mike McCarthy not getting another job. And I don't think he coaches as a head coach in the National Football League again. And now, possibly Kellen Moore.
Well, now possibly Kellen Moore. It depends on what he does. But what would have been worse? Let's just say the New Orleans job that Mike did not pull his name out.
This is a great question.
Oh, thank you. What would have been worse for Cowboy fans? McCarthy goes to New Orleans and succeeds, or Kellen goes to New Orleans and succeeds?
Ooh.
Like, what's worse, the stomach?
I would say Kellen. And how are we defining success?
I think New Orleans' success is different. It's probably make the playoffs.
Okay.
You're right. You know what I mean? Like, they're not.
Kellen's worse. Mike, you felt like you saw it for 5 years. And
yeah.
You're like, oh, it wasn't working here. Kellen, you never got the chance to see what he would do when he ran it.
That was my answer, if you let me finish.
Yeah.
I retweet that answer.
Yeah, I think, look, obviously, if the Cowboys miss the playoffs next year and New Orleans makes it with either one of them, both would have been bad.
If you have a healthy Dak,
if you had a healthy
disastrous.
Dak, yeah. The long-term hurt, obviously, would be with Kellen, because who knows? I mean, he could be there next Sean Payton. The short-term hurt, I think, might be McCarthy, because, like, if you miss the playoffs next year, you could have brought him back. It seems like you wanted to bring him back. I think that would hurt in the short term, but long term,
it would have been Kellen. I think short term, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Kellen does go to New Orleans and have success like Sean Payton, like you're saying there, I don't know how Jerry stomachs that. Like if Jerry goes, like the two assistants that he was just enamored with, of just like, oh my gosh, what genius is there, and then they go to New Orleans, both of them, and have a run, that would be tough.
What did you make of the way they talked about McCarthy in the press conference the other day?
I thought they were definitely trying to. They wanted to set a tone, or they wanted to drop just little bits of information that said, this is our counter to what's being said about how those negotiations went, because it's been consistently said Mike McCarthy got upset basically and said, screw you guys, gives them the middle finger, walks out the door, and leaves them hanging, and then the Cowboys are like, what are we to do? Cowboys definitely, Jerry and Steven seemed like they wanted to leave everybody with the impression that what Mike McCarthy wanted was irrelevant because we wanted him to be gone. That's what we wanted. That's what we had determined. And these were two of the quotes that you had in there. Jerry said, it was time for a change. I've heard it criticized. We spent 5 days getting to come to that decision. We did come to that decision. One of the reasons we came to that decision is because there was this decision available to us as well. Basically saying we picked Schottenheimer over McCarthy. That's what we wanted. Steven said, we just felt like, Jerry felt like, I was supportive of it, that we needed change. Like, that's their whole position has not been, they did not entertain a single idea in this press conference that Mike is the one that walked away. They positioned it the entire time as just, this was us. This is what we wanted to do. And when you start talking about, hey, we needed change, but maybe some continuity, but we really need change. And Schottenheimer, they're talking about, man, he had to bite his lip about some of the things Mike was doing. And these references constantly by all three of them to damaged or broken culture or things that needed to be repaired in the culture. I thought they were subtly throughout that hour and 10 minutes trying to go, we weren't the problem here. And we had determined this was the problem, regardless of how it's being spun now. Is that accurate? Is that totally accurate that that's the way it played out? I don't know. You hear people say McCarthy got pretty frustrated and walked out. But the Cowboys are wanting to position it seems, as though we had determined Mike McCarthy was no longer going to work here.
Well, yeah, they're going to want to position it that way so they don't look foolish, because everyone thinks in our minds we're imagining Mike giving them the middle finger that he embarrassed the Joneses, and they're never used to be told, they're not used to being told no, and Mike did it. So I'm sure that eats at Jerry's craw, and he wants to fight back at that notion.
Yeah, that notion, like the fact that that even exists, whether it would be true or not, Jerry, I'm sure, would be annoyed that that would be the perception.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, no, I'm the one that's in control here. I still say the fact that whole week, when you hear some of the people that talk about how those negotiations went, they weren't even negotiations that whole week. It was just talking about generalized things. Contract never came up. We get the report Friday, like they're going to try to come to an agreement. Then all of a sudden Monday, there's nothing. That felt like they were operating in a way of just, you going to just go, Mike? Mike, you going to go? Like, I still feel like this was a let's make him quit type of move. And that McCarthy did, to his credit. McCarthy is the one that walked away, but I felt like the Cowboys were trying to corner him into that.
Man, that's... I mean, it might be. It might fit the MO of they don't want to hurt feelings around here.
Just make the move and say, like, you're not our guy. You're leaving me with the impression still that you would have taken him back under the right circumstances for you. Like, what? If that's true, why are you playing all these stupid games? Just separate.
I think the right circumstances for them were Jason Witten on staff and
a 2-year deal,
like something like that, just basically getting him prepared to take over. And that's probably why McCarthy was like, no. It's like, all right, well, these are literally the only terms we'll accept you on.
And Shoddy call the plays.
Yeah, and these are literally the only terms that we're going to accept you on is if it's like this. And McCarthy's going like, well, those are not even, that's not even a starting point. No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. My leftovers from the presser, Jerry and Steven, Tolo put it correctly, Chuck. Interviewing for the Cowboys coaching job has to be the easiest in the NFL. Just tell them how awesome they are. Boom, job. As Jerry and Steven were like, yeah, the other people that we spoke with, they were telling us, we're so close. We're right there. We're around the rim. We're right on the cusp. And it's like, okay, that's a little bit delusional. This is the best way we can get to the playoffs and win. He talked about cap ramifications when you have injured players. I do real well managing the cap. We obviously haven't done it well enough. So what does that mean? What did that mean, cap ramifications for injured players? When you tie up all that money in your quarterback, then that robs you of your depth?
I assume what he's saying...
If your quarterback gets hurt?
I assume what he's saying there is just, when all that money that you've invested to contribute then gets hurt, like, you might as well just not even have that money on. It's basically like dead money for that year on your salary cap. Or... he could be talking about players that just break down due to injury that then they have to move on from. Somebody like Zach Martin might be facing that.
One of the things that Jerry also seems to detest is a timeline. He hates. Yeah. Jane Slater asked it, what about your timeline? And Jerry said, where's the clock? Where's the clock in here? I don't see no clock.
Right.
That Dak had nothing to do with the hire. They didn't talk to Dak about the hire. Okay.
Which... I just want to point out, Pro Football Talk just reported about an interview that Dak did on the Cowboys website. And he said that the Cowboys were looking for continuity, but that he spoke on the man he's been in with these 3 years, how consistent he's been. And as I've said, through the highs and the lows, you can only gain respect from somebody that at that point. So yeah, it was easy for me to speak on. So Dak made it sound like he at least gave them some sort of feedback, even if he wasn't consulted on the decision.
Yeah, this was. I mean, the whole process was a huge win for Dak. Huge win. I mean, on the surface, it looks like that he flexed some muscle
in the building. Yeah, it's going to make fans dislike him more who are not fans of him,
right?
Because it's being called a Dak hire.
Which Dak says 4-year contract for Schottenheimer, 4-year contract for me. He's like, we're clearly tied to the hip. This is we're going to rise or fall together here.
Jerry called Steve.
Do we know the money, by the way?
What's that?
Do we know the money?
No, I have not heard. Jerry called Steve Spurrier, asking about Shoddy as a player. Calling up Pete Carroll. Why'd you fire him?
So it was kind of awkward there for a second.
Kind of blunt.
If you loved him so much, why'd you fire this guy?
Yeah.
Like just to very publicly remind everyone, hey, Shoddy was fired from the last job like this.
Let me tell you, I give it around a 40% chance that Steve Spurrier had no idea who Brian Schottenheimer was.
Well, if Shoddy played defense, it was a 20% chance. He didn't know the Washington Redskins.
He had no idea.
Yeah.
I think it was Javon Curse said, I'd never really even met Steve Spurrier when he was playing at Florida.
That's the type of advice that's scary, though, that Jerry takes.
Yeah.
Like, who the hell cares? Unless Steve Spurrier has been in close contact with Brian Schottenheimer over the past 5 years, what does it matter what Brian Schottenheimer did under Steve Spurrier, like playing
as the backup quarterback to Danny Werfel?
Yeah,
I mean, he didn't even play.
If you allowed that, I almost think Jerry goes to the Rolodex and is like, oh, that's a name. Let me call him.
I think he played like week 1 or week 0. Werfel was hurt or something. I think he played like one game there, like in the title year of '96.
I mean, honestly, to be fair, like Jerry has consistently said, he will just call hundreds of people about a subject. It's like, oh, I call everybody. I talk to everybody, which I believe. I think he does just talk to random people about stuff.
On fans being mad, again, this is why he keeps referencing the buying the Cowboy days, because he's like, I went through it then, I can go through it now. Holding on to 30-year memories or longer. He said, I went to school on negative fan comments. How do you think it was when I got rid of Landry? How do you think it was when I bought the team? Right? This hillbilly from Arkansas. This cold-blooded dummy getting rid of America's coach. I was told I needed to resign to get the stadium. So he looks at overcoming all those things as justification for doing the things that he does now. And the buying the Cowboys story gives him his resolve that he just hangs on to.
Does he use it for justification, and I'm just trying to play devil's advocate on this one. Does he use it for justification, or do you think he's saying, I've missed before, but there are these other instances, so I've got my reasons and my process. So I'm just saying you guys have been wrong about my process before, and my process can be right.
All the above. On him and Steven working together, this was reporters trying to poke around, like, why are you guys running things? He said, we have a good working relationship. We don't always agree. Proper deference, and I can be a bully. He could be a bully towards Steven. And why didn't you wait until after the conference championship games to talk with Kellen Moore? Steven said there was no need to. They had zeroed in on Schottenheimer after meeting with Kellen the first time. And, of course, I was told that Kellen bombed the interview. So there's your full recap. Inside the Stars, Mike McCarthy will not be coaching this year. Will it be Kellen Moore in New Orleans?
If he bombed, isn't that the book on Kellen, though, that he just doesn't interview well? And if that's the case, what happened? What if he interviewed really poorly in New Orleans? And they're like, we can't hire him.
Because Joe Brady's not a name. Who else is a name for New Orleans? Who's in the running?
I think
it's just Kellen.
Kellen's the last identified candidate that hasn't either bowed out or gotten hired.